Hi, my name is Jade Wynette, and this summer I was granted the Student Undergraduate Research Fellowship, working alongside two other students, Erilyn Bayron and Aliana Gadice. We were working under Dr. Moraski and the RIT Lab. This summer I was given the opportunity and the freedom to research any interpreting related topic that was of specific interest to me, and I ultimately decided that I wanted my research to be focused on the self-perceptions, attitudes, and beliefs of interpreters. I was inspired to pursue this due to the various interactions I've had with interpreters and other interpreting students throughout the course of my studies. I've noticed that there's a great disparity in how students in the same year of study and interpreters with the same amount of working experience view themselves. Similarly, I noticed a wide range of perceptions regarding their beliefs of their skill levels in relation to their peers. I wondered if some were unduly humble, while others were accurate in their self-perceptions, and while others might have had an unwarranted sense of grandiosity. I was interested specifically in the subjective nature of self-perception and how that might compare to the objective nature of actual skill. Specifically, how the subjective nature of self-perception might influence, either subliminally or overtly, the actions of interpreters. If attitudes and beliefs surrounding actions inform our decisions, then surely self-perception would present itself in a field where language and human interaction are at the heart of the profession. This is when I came across something called the self-serving attribution bias. I feel that understanding this bias might help us gain better insight into how we distribute blame or credit for the level of effectiveness of our work. Are we accepting more credit for when things go right than we are accepting blame for when things go wrong? Are we overlooking ways in which we could have implemented controls in a situation and instead displacing blame? I believe finding answers to these types of questions will help us be more aware of how to make ethical decisions that are vital for our services. As I mentioned previously, my research centered around the cognitive process called the self-serving attribution bias. This is a process by which desirable outcomes are intrinsically credited, while undesirable outcomes are extrinsically credited. This bias occurs when one's positive expectations surrounding an event are incongruous with the end results. Rather than self-reflecting, they instead seek out external factors that blame can be attributed to in order to maintain their positive self-view. Our research focused on how this bias might present itself within the interpreting profession. We collected data to assess who or what interpreters blamed for ineffective interpretations and who or what interpreters credited for their effective interpretations. I had three initial goals when conducting this research. The first was to collect data on interpreters and interpreting students' perceptions of their own skill levels, the skill levels of their peers, and where they believe their skill levels ought to be. This was done to evaluate whether or not people tended to place themselves at a higher, lower, or equal level to their peers, and then to look at whether or not they perceived those skill levels to be meeting the standards they felt they should be achieving. The second goal was to collect data on how much interpreters and interpreting students credit themselves or others for their level of skill. This was done to evaluate how much credit they were giving themselves for their skill level versus how much credit they were extending to others for their skill level. Lastly, I wanted to collect data on what interpreters and interpreting students tend to credit or blame for the effectiveness of their interpretations, whether this was intrinsic or extrinsically credited. This would give valuable insight into how prevalent the self-serving attribution bias might be within the field and how it presents itself. Thanks to the guidance and leadership of Dr. Moraski, the other undergraduate researchers and I were able to collaborate on creating and conducting a survey that was cohesive and addressed each of our three topics of research. After demographics, this survey addressed both Aliana Gadice's topic of research, which was the meaning of the phrase "that was clear," and Erilyn Bayron's topic of research pertaining to interpreters and interpreting students' feedback preferences, before concluding with my section on self-perceptions. For my portion of the survey, 7 questions were asked. The first 3 questions were as follows. What do you think your current level of interpreting skill is? What do you think the level of interpreting skill of your peers is? People who have similar language and interpreting experience to you. What do you think the level of interpreting skill should be for your peers? People who have similar language and interpreting experience to you. The latter 2 questions included the clarification provided in parentheses so that data would not be skewed. For example, if a seasoned interpreter was considering newly graduated interpreters as a part of their peer group. All 3 questions used a Likert scale ranging from 1, which represented none, to 7, which represented expert. Question 4 asked, most of your interpreting skills can be credited to. For this question, a 10-item Likert scale was used and provided options starting with 100% yourself. And for clarification, it gave examples of hard work, effort, practice, commitment, and 0% others, to the opposite end of 100% others, for example, encouragement, instruction, feedback, and support, and 0% yourself. The last 2 questions were open-ended and asked, share some reasons why your interpretations go well, and share some reasons why your interpretations don't go well. This survey ran from July 6th through the 22nd, during which 230 responses were collected. As I was working on my review of literature, the scope began to widen as I realized both the magnitude of the psychological factors that play a role in self-perception, as well as other implications these psychological factors carried in regards to interpersonal and intrapersonal dynamics that might present themselves in the course of the work we do in our field. Some of these topics included in my literature review are as follows. Self-perception's impact on behavior. How do our self-perceptions guide us in the choices we make preceding, during, and following our interpretations? The Dunning-Kruger effect. Are our self-perceptions accurate, or are we unaware of what we don't know? Acceptance of feedback and defensiveness. What factors determine whether or not we accept and apply feedback versus what factors trigger a defensive reaction? Resiliency characteristics. What psychological factors contribute to our ability to persevere and grow versus shut down and grow stagnant? Humility's impact on estimating peers. Is humility considered a beneficial tool in the estimating of ourselves and our peers? Ego's impact on interpersonal behavior. How does our self-perception impact the relationship dynamics between us, our peers, and our consumers? Ego's impact on learning and self-growth. How does self-perception impede or increase our ability to advance our skills and our character development? And lastly, ego in regards to ethics. What ethical implications do our self-perceptions carry? Are we adequately assessing what jobs we are qualified to do and which we are not properly suited for? So now we'll take a look at the preliminary results. While the results of our research appear promising, we have not yet had the opportunity to fully analyze our data as the IRB approval process took a bit longer than we had estimated, and our time this summer unfortunately ran out. So it's important to keep in mind these are some preliminary findings. First, we'll look at the 4th question from my portion of the survey, which asked the survey takers to pick an option from a 10-item Likert scale that asked them most of their interpreting skills can be credited to. As mentioned previously, this ranged from one end where you could attribute 100% of your skills to yourself and 0% to others, to the other end where you attributed 100% of your skills to others and 0% to yourself. As you can see, the vast majority of respondents attribute 50% or more of their skill to their own hard work, commitment, effort, and practice, with the most popular response attributing 80% of their skills to themselves and 20% to the credit of others. While this is a preliminary look at the data, it does appear to confirm the hypothesis that we are more likely to credit our successes to ourselves. and possibly underestimate the importance of the roles of others. The other aspect of the preliminary results we will look at is in regards to the final two open-ended questions pertaining to the credit and blame attributed to effectiveness of interpretations. Some of the most common responses offered when asked to share some reasons why their interpretations go well were as follows. Adequately prepared. This is intrinsic. They were motivated and took the time to prep themselves by reviewing or looking up information prevalent to their assignment. Interpreting skills, intrinsic. This is crediting their own skills related to ASL grammar, conceptual accuracy, message equivalency, processing time, etc. Good team, extrinsic. Their team interpreters were adequately prepared and well equipped for the job. Ability to adapt to clients, intrinsic. This shows their adeptness at matching consumers' preferences and use of language. A good mindset, intrinsic. Making sure that they were mentally prepared to work during an assignment. These preliminary findings seem to align with the hypothesis in that successes are likely to be attributed to intrinsic factors. Some of the most common responses offered when asked to share some of the reasons why their interpretations didn't go well are as follows. Complex subject matter, extrinsic. Subjects that are conceptually hard to grasp are harder to interpret, not necessarily the fault of the interpreter. Uncooperative team or consumers, extrinsic. Other people within the dynamic are impeding the effectiveness of the interaction. Environmental factors. This could be noisy environment, it's too hot or too cold, bad sight line, etc. This is extrinsic. Anxiety/mental health. This is intrinsic. Intrapersonal factors are impeding your ability to receive and put out information effectively. And no prep, intrinsic. The interpreter did not take the time they may have needed to adequately prep. These preliminary findings seem to show more of a balance between intrinsic and extrinsic attribution. While preliminary findings seem to confirm the self-serving attribution bias, a full analysis is necessary before drawing any conclusions. Before we conclude, there are a few people that I would like to thank. The first is RIT and NTID for granting me the Student Undergrad Research Fellowship. This has been an amazing opportunity, and I've really enjoyed my time doing this summer. I would like to thank the RIT Lab and the Space Center for allowing us to use their resources and spaces. I'd like to thank Erilyn Bayron and Aliana Gadice for being wonderful partners in research. It was great to bounce ideas off of each other and give each other feedback. It was so invaluable. And lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Morosky for her leadership and guidance. She had a big undertaking in taking under 3 novice students who have not had the opportunity to conduct research before. So thank you so much for instructing us and guiding us and helping us really take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And thank you all for watching my video.